And now we're going to talk about the other part of exploratory data analysis, which are summary statistics. And last week, when we were doing summary statistics, we only had a couple of statistics that we could run on a categorical variable. We could count up the number of rows that we had in each category, or we could find the proportion. But for quantitative variables, there's a lot more summary statistics. There's the mean, the median, the standard deviation, the max, the min, the IQR. So we have a lot more possibilities. We're going to use these functions inside the summarize command for an entire quantitative variable. Or we could do it for a quantitative variable broken down by a categorical variable. We'd need to put a group by in the pipeline, but I think for this lab, you can do everything without group by. So let's try it out. So we've got our GSS dataset, and then we're going to pipe it into a summarize command. And I'm going to summarize the mean of the number of hours worked last week. So let's click play and see what we get. So there's a couple weird things here. One is that this is a little mini data set. It has one row and it has one variable. But my one variable is named backtick mean parentheses number of hours worked last week parentheses backtick. That's not a great name. It's kind of hard to read. And then the other thing is R found the mean to just be NA. So we need to fix both these issues. One is that I can give a name to my summary statistic. So instead of just saying I want the mean number of hours worked last week, I could say mean underscore hours is equal to mean number of hours last week. So if I hit play, now instead of seeing this long weird thing with the ticks around it, I have a little bit nicer name. And I could have named it anything that I wanted to. I could have named it Amelia, that's my first name, or I could have named it mean hours, all one word, or any other name that I wanted to. And now we want to fix the NA issue. So the reason why we're getting the NA here is that R thinks that anything plus NA equals NA. So we had a bunch of NA values in that number of hours worked last week variable. So it was like 40 plus NA. That equals NA. And again, we could consider whether we should really be doing summary statistics if some of the data is missing. But in this case, I think we're gonna drop those NAs, and then we're just gonna take the mean of the cases that are complete for that the number of hours worked last week. So there's a couple ways to fix this issue, but I think the easiest one is to use this drop NA function in our pipeline. So we're gonna do GSS, then with the pipe, drop NA of number of hours worked last week, then summarize, and I've got that same mean hours code. If I hit play, now I get a number out. The mean number of hours worked was 41.3 hours. Cool. Kind of makes sense. Maybe some people are doing some overtime. We've got those people way out on the tail who are working 89 hours a week, but our mean is around 40. So then what I'd like you to do is try to find the median number of brothers and sisters. So that means you're going to change the summary statistic you're doing, but also the variable that you're using. So I'd encourage you to pause the video, try it out, and then come back. All right, I'm going to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this data from up here, this code, and I'm going to paste it down in here. And then I'm going to think about what I need to change on each line. So on the first line, it's still the GSS data, so I'm going to leave that the same. On the second line, maybe I'm going to need to drop some NAs. So I think I'm going to try dropping NAs on the number of brothers and sisters variable. And then I'm going to summarize, maybe I'll call this median underscore siblings so that it makes a little more sense. I need to change my function from mean to median. And then again, the variable number of hours worked last week to number of brothers and sisters. So I could hit play. and my median number of siblings is 3. Again, I'd be under the median there for the number of siblings. My dad would be way above. So you might want to think about whether it makes more sense for a variable to compute the mean or the median. Usually if it is a symmetric distribution, we would find the mean, and if it's skewed in one direction or another, it's a better measure of central tendency to use the median. So I think actually both the number of hours worked last week and number of brothers and sisters were skewed, so maybe we should have done median for each of them. If we wanted to make a bunch of summary statistics, we can put multiple things into our summarize function. So the summarize function is going to go from many rows of data down to just one, but it could have multiple variables in it. So if I wanted to, I could say I want the range, and the range is going to be the max number of hours worked last week minus the min number of hours worked last week. And then I could put a comma, and I could say the IQR is going to be the IQR of the number of hours worked last week. I could hit play. So the range is 88 hours, so that's basically from the max to the min. And the interquartile range, that's a smaller thing. That's just between Q1 and Q3. So the middle 50% of the data is 15 hours wide, I guess. So statisticians sometimes like a 5-number summary, and we could code that up ourselves. It gets a little bit long. So it's the same GSS, then drop NA, number of hours worked last week, then summarize. And the 5-number summary has the minimum, which is just the min of the number of hours worked last week. It's got the maximum, use max. It's got the median in the middle. And then it's got the lower hinge and the upper hinge. These are a little bit more complicated. So I would need to use the quantile function, and I would need to give it the variable that I'm interested in, and then what quantile I'm looking for. So the lower hinge is the 25th, and the upper hinge is the 75th. So I could just hit play, and this would give me the minimum, the lower hinge, the median, the upper hinge, and the max. So this is kind of like my box plot numbers. There's a slightly different way. Maybe it's easier, maybe it's harder, I'm not sure. There's a function called 5num, which will automatically find a 5-number summary for you. But the 5num function expects a single variable, not a data set. So we need another verb in our pipeline. It's the pull verb, and pull will just pull a single variable out of a data set. So in order to use this, I would do GSS, then pull of the number of hours worked last week, and then I would pipe it into 5num with the open paren, close paren. So if I hit the play button on this, now I get the 5-number summary. It's the same numbers that we saw before. I don't like the 5num quite as well. First of all, because I have to use pull, which I almost never use, but then also because I have to try and remember what each of these numbers represents. If I code it myself, I remember, that first number is the minimum, the last number is the maximum, I've got the median and the hinges in here. So that I like those labels better than just the kind of raw numbers. So at this point, I think that you have all the code you would need in order to complete the real lab. So you could start working on that on your own, or you could come to our synchronous lab session and ask me some questions.